Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we have a really fascinating collection of speeches and writings to go through.
Yeah.
All by George Yeo, a prominent Singaporean politician and thinker.
That's right.
So this deep dive should be pretty interesting, I think.
I think so too. And you've got such a range of material here, from public addresses to, personal diary entries and a foreword that was written about him. So it really does offer a very multifaceted look at his thinking.
Yeah, I was struck by that right away. Just the variety of material
Right.
makes this, I think, a particularly interesting deep dive.
Yeah, I agree.
One of the first things that jumped out at me was this metaphor of Singapore as a bonsai nation.
Right.
What's the significance of that?
It is a powerful image, and I think what Yeo was getting at was this idea that Singapore, while physically small, is meticulously cultivated, and it draws strength from its diversity.
Okay.
And he even tells a story about a businessman who was offended when a Shanghai leader compared Singapore to a bonsai because he saw it as a dismissive comparison, but Yeo saw it differently.
Okay.
He embraced the metaphor, arguing that the bonsai, while constrained in size, is carefully shaped and nurtured to achieve its full potential.
Okay.
He believed that Singapore, too, could thrive despite its limitations by focusing on its strengths, its strategic location, efficient government, its diverse and talented population.
So it's about turning perceived weaknesses into strengths.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay.
And it really highlights Yeo's pragmatic and strategic approach to politics. This idea of the bonsai also connects to his belief that Singapore's survival hinges on a nimble foreign policy and a united citizenry.
Okay.
He saw these two elements as absolutely crucial for navigating the complexities of the global landscape and maintaining Singapore's independence and prosperity.
Makes sense. And he also used the term little red dot
Yeah.
to describe Singapore. So what's the story behind that?
Well, this is another great example of Yeo taking a potentially negative label and turning it into a source of pride. So the term was originally used by a former Indonesian president to kind of dismiss Singapore's significance. But Yeo and other Singaporean leaders, they embraced this phrase. And they used it to rally the nation and highlight Singapore's resilience and determination.
So it became a rallying cry.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
And what's fascinating is that this little red dot incident actually ended up fostering endearment from Indonesians.
Really?
Who saw it as a sign of Singapore's spunk and underdog spirit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Turning a negative into a positive.
Absolutely.
Now, this brings us to a really important point that Yeo emphasizes in his writing, and that's the need to balance internationalization with a strong national identity.
Right. And this is something that's so relevant for Singapore, given its reliance on global talent and its position as a global hub.
Right.
And Yeo argued that Singapore needed to attract and retain top talent from around the world.
While also nurturing a strong sense of Singaporean identity to prevent brain drain.
Yeah, he uses a really interesting anecdote to illustrate this point.
He does.
He talks about his own children being delivered by Sri Lankan doctors.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a great example of how Yeo's own life reflected this cosmopolitan outlook.
Yeah.
That his children were delivered by Sri Lankan doctors highlights just how dependent Singapore is on skilled professionals from all over the world. It also shows that even at a personal level, Yeo saw the value of embracing diversity and global interconnectedness.
So embracing that global interconnectedness, but at the same time, he didn't want Singapore to lose its unique identity in the process of becoming this global hub.
Exactly. He believed that Singapore needed to find a way to be both a global city and a nation state, to be open to the world while also preserving its own culture and values. This tension between internationalization and national identity
is a recurring theme in Yeo's thinking, and it's something that many countries grapple with today.
Now, shifting gears a bit, Yeo was also a big believer in what he called the Asian Renaissance.
Yes.
And he saw the 21st century as the Pacific century, with Asia poised to play a leading role in shaping the global landscape.
It was a historic shift in his view, driven by the reemergence of China and India as economic powerhouses. And he argued that Singapore was strategically positioned to benefit from this trend, serving as a bridge between East and West and a hub for trade finance and innovation in the region.
So it's about recognizing those changing tides of global power and positioning Singapore to ride that wave.
Exactly. And he encouraged a big Singapore mentality, urging Singaporeans to think think beyond the limitations of their small island nation and embrace a more global perspective.
Makes sense.
He saw this as essential for Singapore to remain relevant and competitive in a rapidly changing world.
Now, we've talked about geopolitics and economics, but Yeo also had a deep appreciation for the arts and cultural heritage.
He did.
Why was that so important to him?
Well, he believed that a thriving arts scene was crucial for attracting talent and shaping a cosmopolitan identity.
Okay.
He often used the analogy of five-star hotels investing in art to attract high-end guests.
Right.
Arguing that Singapore needed to do the same to attract top talent from around the world.
So it wasn't just about economics for him.
No.
It was about creating a vibrant and enriching environment that would draw people to Singapore.
Exactly.
Make them want to stay.
He saw the arts as a way to cultivate creativity, critical thinking, and a sense of community qualities that were essential for a thriving and innovative society.
And he put these beliefs into action, right?
He did.
There's that great story about his efforts to preserve the old Nanyang University Arch as a national monument.
That's a great example of his commitment to preserving Singapore's history and cultural heritage. He saw that arch as a symbol of Singapore's intellectual and cultural past.
Right.
And he fought hard to ensure that it was not demolished in the name of progress.
And he even went to bat for the university's original shortened form, Nanta.
He believed that name held cultural significance and represented the university's unique history and identity.
And these efforts show how deeply he cared about preserving Singapore's cultural heritage.
Yes.
And ensuring that it wasn't lost amidst the rapid pace of modernization.
Well, exactly.
Now, this commitment to cultural heritage also extended to the Malay language.
It did.
He talked about the need to balance international relevance with nurturing a Singaporean identity.
He recognized that language was a powerful tool for shaping identity and fostering a sense of belonging. And he argued that the Malay language in Singapore needed to evolve to meet the demands of a globalized world while also retaining its unique Singaporean character.
He even had a personal connection to his Chinese heritage that he explored, right?
You're thinking about his diary entries from his visit to his ancestral village in Chaozu.
Yes.
That journey was a deeply personal one for him, allowing him to connect with his roots and gain a deeper understanding of his cultural heritage. He reflected on the poverty and hardship that he witnessed in the village, which seemed to have a profound impact on him, shaping his views on development and social justice.
So fascinating to see how these personal experiences informed his broader thinking about culture identity and Singapore's place in the world.
It is fascinating.
And this has been a really rich and thought-provoking dive so far.
It has.
And we've only just begun to scratch the surface.
I agree.
So stay tuned, because in part 2, we'll delve even deeper into his political beliefs. And his unique perspective on democracy.
Sounds good.
Socialism, and the role of government.
Looking forward to it. Welcome back to our deep dive into the insights of George Yeo. It's fascinating to see how his thinking bridges cultural heritage and the realities of governing a nation, in a rapidly changing world.
Yeah, you've definitely piqued my curiosity. Let's talk about his political beliefs.
Okay.
He seemed to have a unique take on democracy, almost viewing it as a process rather than a rigid system.
That's a great observation. Yeo saw democracy as a necessary historical process, not a fixed model. He believed in adapting democratic principles to Singapore's specific context, acknowledging both the strengths and limitations of the system as it existed in other parts of the world.
He didn't shy away from acknowledging the trade-offs either.
Right. No, he didn't.
I'm thinking of his comments on the balance between individual freedom and social order.
Right. He definitely addressed those tensions head on. He believed that Singapore's situation required a delicate balance between individual liberties and the need for social stability. He used examples like censorship and internet regulation to illustrate how Singapore approached this, highlighting that it was a constant process of finding the right equilibrium for their unique circumstances.
It seems like pragmatism was a key element of his political philosophy.
It really was.
And it extended to his views on socialism as well, right?
Absolutely. His take on socialism wasn't about traditional wealth redistribution. Instead, he focused on what he called human capital development. Yeo believed in investing heavily in education, healthcare, and housing to create opportunities and uplift all Singaporeans.
So a focus on empowering individuals to reach their full potential rather than simply redistributing redistributing existing wealth.
Exactly. It's a very different approach to socialism, one that's tailored to Singapore's specific context and priorities.
Makes sense.
He saw this investment in human capital as crucial for Singapore's long-term competitiveness in the global economy.
Now, we can't talk about Yeo's thinking without diving into his views on the IT revolution. He seemed to have a real knack for anticipating how technology would reshape the world.
He was ahead of his time in recognizing the transformative power of technology. He saw how the IT revolution would reshape not just businesses, but societies and even political structures. He even predicted that political structures would become more web-like and less hierarchical, with cities as key nodes.
So he saw the internet as fundamentally changing how we connect and organize ourselves.
Yes, and he saw this shift as having profound implications for everything from governance to economics to social interactions. He predicted that wealth in the 21st century would be based on knowledge and emphasized the need to cultivate entrepreneurship.
That focus on adaptability and embracing new ideas seems to be a recurring theme in his thinking.
It is.
It's almost like he saw change as an inevitability and wanted Singapore to be prepared to navigate it successfully.
He definitely saw adaptability as crucial. He believed that societies that embraced technology and adapted quickly would thrive, while those that clung to old ways would fall behind. And he saw Singapore, with its focus on education and innovation, as being well-positioned to lead the way in this new era.
Now, I want to touch on something that might seem a bit unexpected coming from a politician.
Okay.
Yeo's fascination with the role of media, especially in a globalized world.
Right. Well, he had a very nuanced understanding of the media landscape and its impact on international relations. He talked about how different cultural values shape media narratives and argued that there's no such thing as a truly impartial media, particularly when reporting on events with geopolitical implications.
He even used the example of the EP3 incident between the U.S. and China to illustrate this point, right?
He did.
Yeah.
The way each country's media framed the event was vastly different, reflecting their cultural and political biases.
You might want to explain that one for our listener who may not be familiar with it.
Of course. In 2001, a U.S. Navy surveillance plane collided with a Chinese fighter jet over the South China Sea. Both countries had very different interpretations of what happened, and their media coverage reflected those differences.
Right.
The U.S. media focused on the Chinese pilot's aggressive maneuvers, while the Chinese media portrayed the U.S. plane as intruding on Chinese airspace. Yeo used this incident to illustrate how media narratives could exacerbate tensions between countries, particularly when cultural differences and historical baggage were involved.
This is a great example of how something seemingly straightforward can be perceived and portrayed in vastly different ways. Depending on the cultural and political lens through which it's viewed.
Exactly. And Yeo argued that this was especially important to consider in a globalized world where information flows so rapidly and easily across borders. He believed that understanding these different perspectives was crucial for fostering dialogue and preventing misunderstandings between countries.
He also spoke about the challenges of bridging the East-West divide in media coverage, didn't he?
He did. He saw a need for more nuanced and culturally sensitive reporting that took into account the different values and perspectives of Eastern and Western societies. He also talked about the need to localize television and media content to strengthen national identity while staying connected to the global community. It's about finding that balance.
This focus on cultural understanding and bridging divides seems to be a recurring theme in Yeo's thinking.
It is.
He connects back to his ideas about the importance of cultural heritage, the role of the arts, and the challenges of navigating a multipolar world.
It's a thread that runs through much of his work. He saw cultural understanding as essential for building bridges between people, nations, and even entire civilizations. And he believed that Singapore, with its unique blend of Eastern and Western influences, could play a vital role in fostering that understanding.
Now, I'm curious to hear about another area where Yeo's thinking pushed boundaries, his exploration of Confucianism and its relevance in the modern world. He even delved into its complex relationship with Marxism-Leninism in China.
Right. He saw China's political culture as deeply rooted in Confucianism even under communist rule. He argued that China's bureaucratic elite was in many ways a modern-day Mandarinate, drawing parallels between ancient traditions and contemporary practices.
So he saw a continuity between China's ancient past and its present, despite the dramatic political and social changes that have occurred over the centuries.
Yes, he believed that Confucian values continued to shape Chinese society and politics in profound ways. even as China modernized and integrated into the global economy.
He also explored the potential tensions between Confucianism and democracy, didn't he?
He did.
How do you reconcile traditional values that emphasize hierarchy and social order with modern democratic principles that value individual rights and freedoms?
He grappled with that very question, highlighting both the strengths and limitations of democracy in a Confucian context. He suggested that democracy needed to be adapted to different cultural contexts, taking into account factors like social cohesion and long-term planning, which are often emphasized in Confucian thought.
That's a really nuanced perspective. It challenges the assumption that democracy is a one-size-fits-all model that can be simply transplanted from one culture to another without considering the specific historical, cultural, and social context.
It does. And it speaks to Yeo's ability to see things from multiple perspectives and to challenge conventional wisdom. He believed that a deeper understanding of different cultures and values was essential for navigating the complexities of the 21st century.
He even brought up the issue of the equality of nations in international relations, a concept that might seem at odds with traditional Confucian hierarchies.
He acknowledged that tension, but he argued that the world was moving towards a more multipolar system where power was more evenly distributed. He believed that this would require a reinterpretation of Confucianism to accommodate the idea of a more equitable global order.
So he saw Confucianism as a living philosophy that could evolve and adapt to the changing realities of the 21st century.
Exactly. He believed that traditional values could be reinterpreted and applied in new ways to address contemporary challenges.
Now, Yeo wasn't afraid to tackle controversial topics either. He even wrote about Tibet and its complex relationship with China.
He approached the topic with his usual nuance and depth, providing historical context and outlining the strategic importance of Tibet as a buffer between China and India. He discussed the different perspectives on Tibet's status and the challenges of finding a peaceful resolution to the long-standing conflict between Tibet and China.
It's remarkable how he was able to engage with such a sensitive issue in a way that was both insightful and thought-provoking.
It speaks to his commitment to understanding the complexities of the world and to engaging with difficult issues in a way that was both informed and respectful of different perspectives.
This deep dive is really highlighting how wide-ranging Yeo's interests and intellect were.
It really is.
We've gone from the bonsai metaphor to the intricacies of China's political culture. And it seems like with each topic, he brings this unique blend of historical knowledge, philosophical reflection, and a deeply personal perspective.
It's that combination that makes his work so compelling. He wasn't just analyzing events from a detached academic perspective. He was bringing his own life experiences, his cultural background, and his deep sense of humanity to bear on these complex issues.
And speaking of personal experiences, I'm really intrigued by his diary entries from his visit to his ancestral village in Jiaozhou. What stood out to you from those writings?
For me, the most striking aspect was the way he described the poverty and hardship he witnessed in his ancestral village. It seemed to have had a profound impact on him, shaping his views on development and social justice. He also reflected on the cultural differences between Singapore and China, grappling with the complexities of belonging to two different worlds.
It's fascinating to see how these personal experiences informed his broader thinking about culture, identity, and Singapore's place in the world. It adds another layer of depth to his already rich and nuanced perspective.
It does. It shows how personal journeys can shape our understanding of the world and how even seemingly mundane experiences can lead to profound insights.
This has been a truly enlightening exploration of Yeo's thinking so far.
It has.
And I can't wait to see where we go next.
Well, in part 3, we'll delve into his thoughts on education, leadership, and what he saw as the key challenges and opportunities facing Singapore and the world in the 21st century. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. I'm really looking forward to this last part of our deep dive into George Yeo's world. We've explored his fascinating views on geopolitics, culture, even the role of media. But there's still so much to unpack.
There is. And these final chapters, of our deep dive reveal even more about Yeo's character and his vision for the future. His thoughts on education, leadership. They're not just theoretical, they're deeply personal, and they offer a glimpse into what he believed was essential for building a better world.
Yeah, that's what I find so compelling about Yeo's thinking. It's not just abstract ideas, it's grounded in real-world experience and a genuine desire to make a positive impact. So let's talk about education. From everything we've read, it seems like he saw it as more than just acquiring knowledge. It was about shaping character and building a cohesive society.
Absolutely. Yeo often spoke about the importance of what he called the 5 Cs beyond academics: character, culture, community, courtesy, and commitment.
The 5 Cs.
The 5 Cs. He believed these qualities were essential for a well-rounded education and ultimately for building a strong and resilient society.
I love how he emphasized culture and community. It shows he understood that education shouldn't happen in a vacuum. It's deeply connected to the social fabric of a nation.
He saw education as a way to connect young people to their heritage, instill a sense of belonging, and foster a love of learning that went beyond the classroom. For Yeo, education wasn't just about preparing for a job. It was about preparing for life.
And he was a staunch advocate for bilingualism in Singapore, wasn't he? Recognizing the importance of both English for global communication and mother tongues for cultural identity.
Yes, he saw bilingualism as a key strength for Singapore. It allowed individuals to engage with the global community while staying connected to their cultural roots. He stressed the need to maintain high-quality mother tongue education, ensuring that languages like Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil remained vibrant and relevant in Singaporean society.
He also seemed to be quite forward-thinking about the future of education, recognizing that Singapore's system needed to adapt to the demands of a rapidly changing world.
You're right. He saw how globalization and technology were transforming the very nature of work and the skills needed to succeed. He advocated for a more flexible and adaptable education system, one that emphasized critical thinking, creativity, problem-solving, and lifelong learning, essentially equipping people with the skills to thrive in a world of constant change.
He even suggested moving away from a one-size-fits-all approach, recognizing that different students have different strengths and aspirations.
That's a crucial point. He championed the idea of multiple pathways to success. Instead of a rigid system, he envisioned a more diverse approach to education, with more choices and opportunities for students to discover and develop their unique talents. He was particularly supportive of vocational training and the Institute of Technical Education, ITE, recognizing the value of skilled trades in a knowledge-based economy.
It's so interesting to see how all these ideas about education connect back to his views on the IT revolution, entrepreneurship, and the future of work. He was clearly laying out a vision for how Singapore could prepare its citizens for a world that was rapidly transforming.
He absolutely saw the bigger picture. He knew the old model of education focused on rote learning and standardized tests wouldn't be enough. He wanted to see a more dynamic and innovative system that empowered students to become adaptable, creative problem solvers, the kind of people who could not just survive, but thrive in a constantly evolving world.
Now, let's shift gears to leadership. Yeo had some really insightful observations about what makes for effective leadership, especially in a world that's becoming increasingly complex and uncertain.
He believed that effective leadership required more than just intelligence or technical skills. For him, it was about vision, integrity, compassion, and the ability to connect with people on a human level. Leaders needed to be adaptable, resilient, and willing to learn and evolve alongside the world around them.
He even talked about the need for leaders to embrace new technologies and communication platforms, recognizing that the way people consume information and form opinions was changing rapidly.
He saw how technology was empowering individuals, democratizing access to information, and creating new ways for people to connect and collaborate. He believed that leaders needed to adapt their communication styles to engage with a more digitally savvy and interconnected population.
And he didn't just focus on leaders at the top. He talked about the importance of listening to young people and understanding their perspectives.
He saw the younger generation as a source of new ideas, fresh energy, and a willingness to embrace change. He believed that leaders needed to be open to learning from young people, incorporating their perspectives into decision-making and empowering them to shape the future.
It's another example of how Yeo's thinking was so forward-looking. He understood that the world was changing and that younger generations would be inheriting the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century. He wanted to ensure they had a voice in shaping that future.
Absolutely. He saw it as the responsibility of his generation to mentor and guide young people, equipping them with the skills and knowledge they needed to navigate a world that was becoming increasingly complex and interconnected.
This brings us to his thoughts on the role of government and the delicate balance between individual freedom and social order. It's a topic that's often debated, and I'm curious to hear how Yeo approached it.
He advocated for a pragmatic approach to governance, recognizing that there was no one-size-fits-all model. He saw the role of government not just as enforcing rules, but also as creating an environment that fostered opportunity, innovation, and social harmony.
So it was about finding the right balance, recognizing that individual freedom is important, but it can't come at the expense of the well-being of society as a whole.
Exactly. He believed that individual freedom needed to be balanced with the need to maintain social order and protect the common good. It was a delicate balance, and he saw it as an ongoing conversation, a constant process of finding the right equilibrium for Singapore's unique circumstances.
He also often talked about the need for Singapore to forge its own past, didn't he? Learning from other countries, but ultimately adapting those lessons to its own context and circumstances.
He rejected the idea of blindly following Western models of development or governance. He believed that Singapore needed to chart its own course, drawing on its own cultural values, historical experiences, and its understanding of its own strengths and limitations. He encouraged Singaporeans to be confident in their own abilities and to find solutions that worked for their unique situation.
This deep dive into the world of George Yeo has been incredibly enlightening. His insights are so relevant to the challenges we face today, from globalization and technological disruption to the need for effective leadership and a renewed focus on education. What strikes me most is his optimism and belief in human potential. Even when discussing complex challenges, he seemed to see opportunities for growth, innovation, and progress.
He did. He saw challenges as opportunities to learn, adapt, and create something new. He believed that through education, collaboration, and a willingness to embrace change, we could build a better future for everyone.
His legacy is one of intellectual curiosity, cultural sensitivity, and a deep commitment to making the world a better place. He challenged us to think critically, to embrace diversity, and to work together to create a more just, peaceful, and prosperous world for all.
He truly was an extraordinary individual, and though we've only just begun to explore the depths of his thinking, I hope this deep dive has given you a sense of his brilliance, his compassion, and his unwavering belief in the power of humanity to shape a better future.
Well said. And for our listener, we encourage you to delve deeper into George Yeo's work. His writings offer a wealth of insights that are as relevant today as they were when they were first written. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the mind of one of Singapore's most fascinating thinkers.